Today, I want to jump in and talk about master plan communities, what those are, the pros, the cons, and why you should consider it or why you shouldn't, especially in terms of new construction. So let's get into it. So a master plan community is going to vary from a traditional, what you might think of as a neighborhood. These kind of are relatively, I say relatively, they've come about probably in the last 15 or 20 years of how developers and builders use spaces and land and what they put into communities. So the biggest difference between a true, what I would call a master plan community and just a new or just a neighborhood in general is, so on that neighborhood in general, there is a somewhat of a build plan, but there's not like a clear, hey, this is how we're doing this for the next decade or more, right? It also probably doesn't include a bunch of amenities. So I'll give you a perfect example. The community we live in has, I believe, 4 phases. I would not consider our community a master planned development. It is a neighborhood. We do have an HOA. We have one pool. And we have a basketball court. That's it. But the first phase of our neighborhood started, 10, 15 years ago. They built, and then they built the second phase, built the third phase, and then they stopped for a bunch of years. And then a developer came in and bought some land that was adjacent to our neighborhood and added on and basically created the final phase, which is where we bought. And that kind of created our neighborhood. We are not master planned. Master planned neighborhood is going to think massive. Not super massive, but think grand on scale. For context, I will give you some, to think about here in DFW. So things like Devonshire in Forney, or Wood Creek in like Fate, or you think about M3 in Mansfield, or one of the ones that people know really well, Craig Ranch up in McKinney, or one of the new ones that's coming in would be like Solterra in Mesquite, places like Winsong Ranch up in Prosper, or the new Painted Tree that's coming to McKinney, or Mantua that's going on the far north side of like basically Van Alstyne. Those are master plan communities. And I would say what makes those stand out as master plan communities is the scale at which they build. Those are probably 10 to 15 year projects. They're built out in multiple phases. There is a absolute plan for every bit of land that is part of that development. There's going to be houses. There's going to be multiple amenity centers. You're going to get potentially dog parks, walking trails, hiking trails, green spaces, playgrounds, splash pads, tennis courts, pickleball courts. And some of those communities, Winsong Ranch and things like that. You've got like the beachfront, like the lagoon area that they're building. Solterra in Mesquite's getting a tree house. You've got fishing ponds. You've got stock ponds. You've got all these different things that go into what makes that a master plan community. In some of those communities, you even get like mixed use and commercial. So you think about like shops, or maybe like grocery stores or restaurants or bars, or anything that kind of comes together with that. In some of those communities, like for example, Devonshire, you get like single family residences that are on land, but then you also get like townhome developments that are going to share walls, and those are in the center. Those plans oftentimes include schools, or middle schools or elementary schools or high schools, depending on how the city and the school district and the developer all work together. You'll find those inside of those neighborhoods. So that's kind of what you need to think about when you think about master planned a community. I would say too, the second thing about a master plan community is you find homes at all different price points. So for example, take Devonshire. We'll go back there in Forney. You can find homes in there that start in the mid to high 3s all the way up to the 600,000 and 700,000s. Winsong Ranch, when they started kind of in that middle tier, moved up. They have seriously since then really moved up. Solterra in Mesquite is going to have prices starting in the mid 3s and 4s up to the 6s and 7s. So you're going to find all these different price points within those communities. So I think that could be a pro too if you're looking at something in a master plan community. I would say from an investment standpoint, I think a master plan community is a solid investment. They're going to retain their value well. Because you have so many common spaces, you have so many amenities, you have so many things that people desire and that they want. The homes in that neighborhood are really probably going to maintain and grow in value, especially if you're one of the first people into a neighborhood and you know that they've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 phases and they're going to build for the next decade. Your home value is going to continue to increase as the infrastructure and as that neighborhood is finished out and built out and that community kind of comes all together. So I would say if you're on the fence about it, I think that is a solid investment. Let's talk about some of the downsides though of a big master plan community. I think builders have gotten better, or some of the developers have gotten better about how they lay these things out, because there's some of these communities that are just very much like grid, right? And it's just like draw the tic-tac-toe board. But the ones that you really find that are great are going to be, they're going to have those nice windy roads throughout. They're going to have a great use of the space. Make no mind about it, homes are going to be clumped together, but at least it feels like it uses a good pieces of the space, sidewalks and green spaces and parks and all of those things. And really and truthfully, as those neighborhoods develop, they kind of develop a brand identity of their own, and it's always true. The good brands succeed and the bad brands don't. It's why Nike and Apple still exist and Circuit City and Kmart don't, because their brand failed, right? I mean, there was other things, but the brand failed. And so what happens is you start to have a brand notoriety recognition. I guarantee you, if you're in the DFW marketplace and you ask somebody and they're like, oh, I live in Windsong Ranch. Most people know what that means, because that community is like a hotbed of great place. Like that is if you want to live to the north side, you're like, oh yeah, if I could afford to get into Windsong Ranch, I would definitely want to be in there. And there's that notoriety that comes with that, which again speaks back to that, resale and the value of your home continuing to appreciate because of where it's located, because it has been built a successful brand. It's been named, development of the year several times over, won multiple awards, and then had several communities modeled after that of, these communities that of what they're doing, like I talked about Solterra and Painted Tree and all these other things that are like, oh, that was successful. Let's run that back and hope we can build something just like that. Another downside, it's a good one. We got to talk about it. HOAs, right? People, I mean, if you've never lived in an HOA, people will be like, oh, I've heard horror stories of all the things the HOA did and they were terrible and they were awful. Not all the time. Sometimes, yes, not all the time. But I will tell you, in a master plan community, you're probably going to have a stricter HOA in terms of, hey, they're going to tell you what you can and can't paint on your house. Like, you're not going to be able to paint your house a certain color. They're going to be strict about, hey, here's the type of trees that you can plant in your front yard. Hey, make sure you put your trash cans away because they can't be seen from the street. You might get a fine. Not that I ever experienced that. They're going to, so it's a good and bad. It's a checks and balances, right? A, they're going to maintain the level of the neighborhood. But B, or on the flip side, they're going to maintain, sometimes to your detriment, the level of the neighborhood. So you just have to, if you've never lived in that, you have to kind of understand that dynamic of what that HOA looks like. I will say the more developed the neighborhood is, the more influence your neighbors have on the HOA. So when those neighborhoods first start, the developers hold majority of the seats, on the board or in the managing power or whatever. As that neighborhood develops out, more and more of the neighborhood people who live there are going to have influence on how the neighborhood works and functions. Also, you're probably going to have a management company. That's just the way it goes. The developer is going to hire such and such company, and they are there to manage the HOA, manage the books, plan events. Hopefully they're doing their jobs, keeping the pools, cleaned and maintained, keeping tennis courts open, giving you access to the activity centers or the gyms or whatever you've got. Hopefully they're not being difficult, but you're going to have that. The other con, somebody's got to pay for those amenities, right? So those HOAs can get to be pretty pricey. We've seen anything from $700 a year to $1,500 or $2,000 a year, depending on the community. So just know that if you're going to have those amenities, you're going to have all of these things that go into that. Somebody has to be paying for it. That somebody is you as a homeowner, and that gets calculated as part of your lending qualification. So just be sure you're aware. Hey, if we're moving into this community, we're going to have a HOA. It's going to be calculated as part of our lending, and we've got to pay it. So just be mindful of that. Secondly, it's also probably going to cost you in a MUD or a PID. So that's a municipal utility district or public improvement district. Those are real fancy ways of saying taxes. That means that the builder came in and did the development, put in the roads, put in the infrastructure, put in the water, put in the electricity, and somebody's got to pay for it. Luckily, that somebody is you as a homeowner in a master plan community. There's some slight subtle differences between a MUD and a PID. We can get into that in a totally different video, but just know that it's going to affect your tax rate. So in North Texas, what we often see, people talk about, oh, property taxes are crazy. Our property taxes average somewhere between 1.9 and 3.3%, depending on the community. That is in most of those communities, those master plan communities are going to have either a MUD or a PID factored into that number. So it might make your tax rate jump from 2.2 to 2.4, or 2.2 to 2.3. So just be mindful, you're going to have that tax rate in there as part of being in a master plan community as well. My last dig on a master plan community is at times it can feel cookie cutter, and it's hard to put that into words unless you've driven it and you've experienced it. And it's like, some of you are like, I don't get what you mean. Others are going to be like, yeah, I 100% feel that yeah, it could be cookie cutter. So I would just tell you, hey, it's important to go drive your neighborhood that you're thinking about moving into, take a look, ask questions, talk to people, hire me as your realtor, because I can tell you, I can get you connected with all kinds of people and tell you, hey, here's what you should look at, here's what you shouldn't look at. This is the best community that could fit for you. If you're thinking, hey, I'm not going to use all of those amenities, then we need to look for a new build community that is just a neighborhood. It's, smaller HOA, cheaper, less amenities. If you're not going to use them, there's no sense in paying for them. But if you're like, oh, I want to use those things, I want all of those things to happen, then we need to get you in a community that has those and makes sense for you. Hey, I hope you found help in this video as we talk about, master plan communities, what's right for you and your family. Just want you to know I'm here to be a resource, answer any questions, advocate for you. I sell a ton of new construction here in DFW. So if you have questions, best case scenario, reach out, contact information. It's there, but I can't help if you don't reach out. So I'm here for you, answer any questions. If you found value in this video, if you have questions, drop the questions down below. Happy to answer those. If you're looking to learn about new construction here in DFW, subscribe to the channel. We give out new videos every single week. We're talking about things like this that are helpful for you as a buyer, as a seller, as somebody just looking to learn. And of course, as always, if you want to browse homes, you can do that down below in the description. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in our next video. Bye for now, friends.